Hi folks, Robert Lowell Goller here. I am outside what is today an apartment house, but until 1972, this building behind me was the Park Grocery. Now, ask people who've been around a while, and they might not remember it as the Park Grocery. They remember it as Hubbs Store. Mr. and Mrs. Hubbs, Raymond and Irene Hubbs, ran the store for many, many years, and they became sort of local celebrities for running this little store here next to the park. And of course it was called the Park Grocery because it was located across the street from Hamlin Park. Now I include this story of the Hubbs and the Hubbs store in my book, Who Put the East in East Aurora and Other Chronicles of Our Past. This would be another chronicle of our past. Because I have a whole chapter in the book about shopping and how trends of shopping have changed over the years. And the Hubbs store is symbolic of a big shift in how we shop and how local stores adapted or changed, or how households changed in how we shopped. And the Hubbs store is a perfect example of that. They closed in May of 1972, and it was a very big deal when that happened because actually the Easter Advertiser had it right across the front page. It was a very big deal because the Hubbs store had been around so long. The Hubbs had considered retiring for several years, but finally in 1972 they decided to wrap things up and retire instead of trying to sell the business. Now, the Hubbs store goes back years, decades. It actually traces its roots to June of 1912, and through my research I was able to find this, and I include it all in the book, so if you want more details. But Mr. Russard opened a store here, a grocery store, here at this corner of Prospect Avenue and South Grove Street. Now, Hamlin Park had just become a public park about a decade earlier in 1899. So in 1912, he took advantage of the traffic that might have been coming to this grove as a public park. By 1920, there was another owner who had actually named it the Park Grocery. So that's where the name came from, adjacent to Hamlin Park. Now, George Hubbs purchased the business in 1921, and that's Raymond's father. And he was a former Roycrofter, and he purchased this little grocery store here on South Grove Street in 1921. Now, Raymond Hubbs, his son, had been around helping out in the business and eventually purchased it from his dad, took it over from his dad, and he married Irene, and they became the Hubbses. And the store, even though the official name was the Park Grocery, became known as Hubbs Store. They actually even advertised it that way in the local newspapers. The classic mom and pop grocery store. We had several of them here in East Aurora, but this was a perfect example of one where the owners are in the business. They actually lived upstairs before they built the house next door, and they moved next door to the shop. I actually got to meet the Hubbs when I was younger. They had been long retired, but they were still living in the house next door. And they had deliveries. They knew everybody by name. You could get credit in the store. They had everything you need for a small local grocery. You could call ahead and they would have the order made for you. I talk a little bit in the book. I have a whole chapter on shopping, and I talk about how we shop has changed and how local clerks at local stores used to get the merchandise for you, put together your order, and today of course we're expected to go around and pick up the items, and I talk a little bit about that and who started that, but classic mom and pop store here. Another thing that was interesting about this store, many people remember, is they were sort of the unofficial answering service for Hamlin Park. People would call the store and ask Mrs. Hubbs if the ice rink was open, or if the baseball game was still on, if it was raining, that sort of thing. So she took on that role. Also, there was a charming story about how she would, many charming stories about how she would, small kids coming home from school and they would need a Band-Aid, they'd stop into Hubbs store. A safe place for young people. Their candy counter was famous, depending on your point of view, here in East Aurora among the young children. So a classic small mom and pop store that many people remember fondly here in East Aurora. In the early days, they were one of the only places with a phone, and so people would rely on that as well, and they would take orders and they would have a delivery. Now, over time, how we shopped has changed, And so they actually changed into a delicatessen more than a grocery store in the later years. But by 1972, Mr. and Mrs. Hubbs had realized that they couldn't really go on, and they were considering retiring. And anyway, so they decided to close the store. And again, it was a very, very big deal in East Aurora, because what it signaled, and I've done a lot of research into this, and I talk about this in the book quite a bit, is what it signaled is the end of what I would call the mom and pop era. We have a lot of stores in East Aurora that are still operated, of course, by the owners, but the idea of a grocery store being run by a husband and wife team who lived above the store, or in this case next to the store in the later years, that doesn't happen anymore. And the Hubbs store was generally the last one to have that happen, to take on the mom and pop store and operate in that way. Raymond, actually, when they announced the retirement, Mr. Hubbs said that it has simply gone out of style in our modern transitory life to have a small mom and pop store. What had happened is supermarkets had opened. In East Aurora, we had Loblaws, we had Bell's that had eventually become Tops. There were bigger stores, and people had home refrigeration. That changed everything too. So in the earlier days, a housewife would go to the store every single day to buy what they needed for that evening's meal. They were buying in bulk, and like we do today, we make a weekly, maybe even bi-weekly shopping trip. That didn't happen. You'd go to the small mom and pop store, and that changed. The supermarket actually changed everything and put the Hubbs store out of business. And stores like it. How we traveled, more people had cars. I talk about that a lot. I have talked about that recently, as more people had cars, there were more cars. You could drive to the supermarket. You didn't have to walk to your neighborhood mom and pop store. More variety, in many cases cheaper prices at the larger supermarkets. So it just changed. And two-income households changed things as well. Housewives, Mr. Hubbs talks about this, did not have time to go shopping every single day. And so it just changed. So the closing of the Hubbs store is symbolic, and I talk about this, of a drastic change over several decades of how we shop and how stores operated. And I called it the end of the mom and pop era here in East Aurora, the closing of this little store behind me. And of course, after they closed the store, it became an apartment house. And a lot of people I talk to, surprisingly, who have not been around since the 1970s, don't realize that this was a little grocery store named the Park Grocery here across from Hamlin Park, but more often known by its owners, the Hubbs store. And lots of fond memories of a simpler time when people would go to a mom and pop grocery store to do their shopping.